Good morning. My name is Dr. Larry Force, and I'm a professor of psychology at Mount St. Mary College and a director of the Center on Aging and Disability Policy, along with my friend and colleague, Dr. Jeffrey Kahana. We'd like to welcome you to our ProActive Caring School Exchange. We started this as a way to respond to the COVID pandemic. So we were going through April, and Lisa Nathan and Peggy Pisano have taken the lead in this, and we're so appreciative of what they're doing. Peggy comes at it from the school psychology behavioral perspective, and Lisa Nathan comes at it from the parent, advocate, and meditator perspective. So it started off as an informal dialogue, and then we've now ramped it up to a weekly exchange. We stopped over part of the summer, and I think now more than ever, this type of information and resources that Lisa and Peggy provide is extremely important, especially with the fact that even so late into the summer, so close to school year, it's still not clear about what direction school districts will go in. This project is funded by the New York State Developmental Disability Planning Council, and it's called ProActive Caring. And we have a ProActive Caring Digital Resource Center, which you can find at proactivecaring.org. And it has a tremendous amount of resources. And we're so pleased with the relationships and the collaboration that we've been able to develop throughout the state of New York. So today's focus is on writing the emotional anxieties of the new school year, one breath at a time, because everything that we do really relates back to our focus on the mindfulness practice, mindfulness-based practice, stress reduction. With our partnership and friendships up in Buffalo, with Parent Network of Western New York, it became very clear that our overarching tagline would be, got stress, we can help. And who doesn't have stress during this time? And we really do feel as though that we can help. So with that, I'd like to introduce Peggy Pisano and Lisa Nathan and turn it over to them to lead this discussion and exchange. So good morning.
Good morning.
Everybody.
I think generally how we've planned our day is that I would just speak briefly about what the anxieties are, in this case, for the school year, and then Lisa will kind of take us through some meditative practices. So let me just start by saying this is probably one of the most challenging openings of school that anyone has faced, at least certainly in my 30-year history of working in a school. And I think that everybody is feeling general anxieties and stress and uncertainties, because I think districts are uncertain and states are uncertain, and therefore families and people and children are uncertain. So there are many, many questions that remain. Some districts have already put plans in practice. Some, like the district I come from, had their board meeting last night where they were going to decide at least what the opening was going to look like. But I think if you've stayed in the news, you know that even colleges who have had openings have had to reevaluate their plans. So, some of the questions that are facing parents are, is my school even going to open? And what will that look like? Is it going to open virtually? Is it going to open with a hybrid model where students go some days and not other days? One of my colleagues and friends said she has middle school and high school students who may go virtually, and she has an elementary school son who is scheduled at least to go in person. So, how do you discuss that and decipher that within your family? Some of the other questions that have faced parents, and Lisa probably could speak better to this, is, but, how do I keep my child safe and balance the educational needs at the same time? will my child lose the skills that they had? And that always happens. Well, I shouldn't say always, but it often happens over the summer months to begin with. So we've had sort of a long, prolonged summer, if you will. And now we're starting fall in a very tenuous kind of position. How do I keep my child educationally sound, and how do I keep my child healthy, and how do I keep my child and family healthy? Because if my child goes to school and comes back and has been interfacing with various people, how do I know, what the health situation of those people are? And how do I work and have my child be home remotely if that's the practice of my school district? So there's lots of uncertainty, and I think those uncertainties have created a significant degree of anxiety for parents and students, especially for those of students with disabilities, and certainly younger students. I've heard plans that students with disabilities perhaps will be going into school in person in some districts. Some districts are doing students who are transferring in. So for example, kindergarten, kids who are going into middle school, and ninth graders going into high school, those students will be going in person to get acclimated to their building and their teacher, because that's all new for them. And then maybe other students will be joining later on. So there's all kinds of plans. All districts are doing, I guess what they think is best for their student population. I think it's hard for larger districts because just busing tons of students into school is hard enough. So I think all of those things create a level of anxiety for families and children specifically, but parents who are trying to decipher what's the best thing that I should do or could do for my child. In the past, we have talked about anxiety and had some strategies for dealing with our own anxieties in relationship to this COVID world. But I'm just going to recap a little bit about anxiety in general. And so anxiety is a feeling of tension or worry. Sometimes it's free-floating. In this case, I don't think it's free-floating. I think it's very specific about what's going to happen to my child and his or her education. And anxiety can make it difficult for people to think, and it can make it difficult for people to make decisions. And sometimes we're just so unmotivated and overwhelmed by our choices that we kind of do nothing. And so, anxiety has the gamut of behavioral effects in all of us. And I think that that's the kind of thing that is happening right now. So what do we do? I think the most important thing for parents to remember is that children do react to your emotional states as well. So, the more anxious you are, the more anxiety you demonstrate to your child, the more anxious they're going to feel. So if at all possible, try to keep some of those feelings and emotions about the upcoming, or the fears for that matter, of the upcoming school year, to yourself. Demonstrate them, speak to your child about, some of the things that they might be seeing or feeling, but panicking over it and demonstrating that panic is not going to help anyone, even though we may feel that panic, we may feel that stress. And that, people and parents, guardians, whomever, have to demonstrate some flexibility and some compassion in these times. And so there are some tips that we've kind of uncovered for parents. And I'm just going to kind of review some of them with you so that maybe some will hold true for some of the people out there who are struggling. So I think the best tip that I can provide is be a role model for your child. Children learn from their examples at home specifically, and now they've been home for a really long time. So try to demonstrate, some positive feelings towards what's happening out in the school world. I'm sure that many parents are feeling both positive and negative feelings about school this year. And so sometimes as parents, we demonstrate those frustrations about our school, about our district, about our teachers for that matter, to our children. And so I think we're best possible demonstrating some positive feelings and speaking to your child about, these are unknown charted territories, but your teacher's going to do the best they can do. Your principal's going to do the best they can do, and your school district's going to try real hard to keep you safe and keep you academically challenged. And so, because again, I think that if we feel negative and we demonstrate those negative feelings to our children, then they'll come in with a sort of negative attitude towards school. And we have enough stress to begin with. We don't need that. I would say be honest and accurate with your children as best possible, depending upon their understanding level and their age level about the virus, about school, about all of the things that they will see sort of when they get there. If at all possible, locate in your community other resources. Some communities and some parents I've heard are doing things called pods. And so they are small groups of children who are either supervised, taught, and I guess everybody's going to work out their own system by a parent in the group. And so that parent, if children are going virtually to school, then that parent will kind of spearhead whatever is coming over the computer so that they can help the children. They're also doing some pods for socialization, so that these are the 5 or 6 kids that I know, their families, I know, where they've been, so to speak. And so I feel safe that my child can interact and socialize with those children. So those are things that community people are doing in their own neighborhoods, in their own schools. So as best possible, I would look to see if in your community or if you're in your school group, anyone's doing that, and perhaps maybe join in or just, be knowledgeable about what's occurring. I would say review your district's plans. One of the things that I read about was that in your school district, if you decide to go into school, if they're doing in-person learning, but then decide that's really not for you and your family, can you backtrack and have your children go remotely instead? And what does that mean for your particular school district, and how do you access those services for your child if you want to change sort of halfway through? Remind your child that learning takes place everywhere. And I think we've talked about this in past, and I think when we had some of our special ed teachers involved in our program, they talked about learning math skills at the grocery store, or learning math skills while balancing, a household budget, if you will. It's harder for older students to do that because high school kids are learning, different things, but certainly learning can take place at home, it can take place in the classroom, and it can take place in the community. And I think conveying that message to your children is something that would be positive, because as we know from other states and other facilities, sometimes they open with the best intentions and then close down. And so if in fact that happens, your child at least is a little bit prepared to work at home or work in the community or do something other than the traditional classroom. I think for students who are going to work at home, who are going to work virtually and not go in-person classes, they should have a set schedule. It doesn't have to be exactly, I guess it depends on your school, because some schools are going to have students log on when their class would have been scheduled. And in that case, then there is a innate schedule already associated with the program. But if your child is doing virtually remote kind of learning, then have a schedule for them. You get up at this time, we do our morning routine, and then we log on and we spend an hour or two, what have you, however long you think their attention span might be, on the computer doing the work, and then breaks and lunch and so on and so forth. But have some kind of routine built in so that there's an expectation that children can follow. I think also something I didn't really think of, but especially for young children or children who have disabilities, prepare them for what they're going to see in their school, because they're used to seeing a larger classroom with the teacher in the front and so on and so forth, however their class is set up. But today we'll have masks on, we may have plexiglass, we may have fewer kids in the classroom, we have desks spread apart, we may be having classrooms in the gym or the cafeteria. So I would say prepare your child for that kind of environment. It might not be the environment they're used to seeing. And so again, that difference may create an anxiety level that we could probably sort of dissipate if we kind of prepare children. Look for emotional difficulties. If you see an increased level of anxiety, if you see someone who is more anxious, if someone's more irritable, if someone's not getting the proper amount of sleep, just changes in your child. If you see those things, certainly try to discuss them with your child and, be aware of what's happening. If something is prolonged or significant, then contact your school, contact your counseling staff in school. They're all either working or working virtually, but they are around. So if you see those kinds of difficulties that your child might be having, keep in mind that those people are accessible. One of the interesting things that I read when I was looking at this topic was we may see an increase in bullying because kids are kids and they say things that they hear or see, and they may feel like maybe you have the virus because you are from another country or you speak a different language. So talk to your child about those kinds of things. Make sure that they understand that the virus has nothing to do with who you are, but just it's like getting the common cold. It's getting some kind of thing that's out there, but that it's not related to the way people think or feel or where they come from or the color of their skin or their religion. So, keep those things in mind for your child. And talk about those things. I think, keeping those lines of communication open as best possible, finding out what your child is feeling and thinking is really critical, because we don't know and we make assumptions and it could be something totally different than what we were thinking of as parents. And remind your child about all those proactive things that they can do to keep themselves healthy. Social distance, washing their hands, wear their mask. Those things should be practiced. I think, we still have a couple of weeks before school actually starts, if it starts. So I would keep practicing those things for younger children, have them wear their masks at home or when you take them out in the community so that they're acclimated to that by the time they get to school, so that the teacher's not, sort of arguing over that or fighting or teaching that skill. That's one less thing that, is a challenge if we're a classroom teacher, because again, the teachers are going to want to stay distant from a child. And that's going to be difficult if in fact they don't know how to wear their mask or how to put it on and so on and so forth. Especially for little kids, especially for kindergartners who this is their first time. I mean, they can't tie their shoes. They can't even put their jackets on half the time. So those things that you can practice at home before you get there, the better off your child will be, so that they don't have to have as close contact with their teacher wherever possible. The teachers are there, obviously, and they're going to be there to teach. And I'm sure that it's very difficult for those younger children or those children with disabilities who really need to have that physical contact with their teachers and their aides and speech therapists and so on and so forth. But I think as parents, if we can limit those those physical interactions. So if we teach our child to wear a mask before they get to school, I think the better off we will be. And I think most importantly, and I'll just leave with this point, and I'm going to turn it on to Lisa, but most importantly, it's a new world. It's a new way of doing business, and we're all learning at the same time. And so I think our best may not be perfect. Our school district's best may not be perfect. Our children, and certainly ourselves, where no one is perfect. I think we have to accept our ability to just weather this storm as best possible, and then just keep some of these strategies in mind, and some are, will be effective, I think, for your children and for you. I think Lisa has some other skills that she wants to talk to us with respect to meditation and so on.
Okay, well, thanks, Peggy. And actually, I'd like to take the title of this podcast very literally when we say one breath at a time. And when you think about it, when we want to take care of ourselves, what do? We look to exercise, eating better, and drinking more water. 3 ways that we can undoubtedly, improve our health. But what about our breathing? Most of us can survive about 3 weeks without eating, 3 days without water, but on average, maybe only about 3 minutes without breathing. And how much do we really consciously think about our breathing? Now, breathing is certainly, it's part of our autonomous nervous system, like blinking our eyes, pumping our heart, digesting our food. And we think, well, as long as we're breathing, I mean, we're okay. But the question is, are we? And in fact, even though as babies we're born knowing how to breathe naturally from our belly, from our abdomen, over time, for various reasons, many of us develop a suboptimal way of breathing through our chest. When you think of sitting in the doctor's office and they ask you, you're sitting on the table and they ask you to take a deep breath, how many of us kind of raise our shoulders up and, take like that classic thing, which is not really a good way to breathe, which sounds kind of like, ridiculous, but to breathe better and to breathe how we naturally do as babies, and all species on this planet, actually, except for sometimes for us, is to breathe from our bellies. And I can't see my belly here, but a great way to do this, and I've spoken about this before, is to put your hands on your belly, or even better, lying down, put like a stuffed animal or something on your belly. And when you breathe in, you want to see that rise and fall. You want to see your belly actually rise. So you're breathing from your diaphragm. So when you breathe in, your belly is rising, and then it rises to your chest, and then you breathe out the same way. So that's one thing. Another, now imagine walking down the street. You're taking a walk, you're minding your own business, and all of a sudden a big dog comes out of somebody's house, like snarling and growling and running at you. You're going to go into automatic stress response, fight or flight. Your breathing is going to start to get more rapid. You're going to breathe more from up here, and it's going to trigger that stress response. Sometimes that happens for people who have panic attacks, or think if you're in extreme pain, how you breathe. And, that kind of breathing is meant to only happen for a short period of time to get you through that danger. But then you're supposed to come down and go back into relaxation mode or rest and digest mode. But very often, because of life stresses, and God knows we have a lot of stress now, a lot of us don't go back into that rest mode of breathing. And that is the belly breathing, the rest and digest mode, nice natural breathing from the belly. The other couple of ways I want to talk about how we can breathe better is, well, one is the belly breathing, which actually helps your body functions, including strengthening your immune response. And the other way is breathing through your nose. We can take oxygen into our bodies two ways, either through our nose or through our mouth. And we take our nose for granted. It's just this, this thing in our face, but really it's a perfect method of taking in oxygen for our bodies. It has a filtering system, it has all sorts of controls that really helps improve our health, and again, improves our immune response. And I harp on this, of course, because of the time especially the times we're living in right now. And the alternative, breathing in through our mouths, can be a real difficulty. Think about sleep problems, think about snoring. People who tend to be mouth breathers have a lot more trouble, respiratory issues. Again, it's a conscious decision. It's a conscious way we can improve our health by breathing in through our nose. And the other way that we can create, and what I want to do is go a little bit at the end of this. I'll just have a couple of more things to say, and then we'll practice these methods. The other thing that we can do to improve our breathing is through a stable rhythmic breathing. And this has been proven. Navy SEALs use this in practice to learn this breathing technique. And it's a rhythmic breathing. Sometimes people call it box breathing. Ideally, you want to breathe in through your nose, inhale through your nose for a count of between 4 to 6 seconds. And this is important. On average, about 5 seconds. And breathe out through your nose for that same amount of time. And do this for a few cycles. Cycle breathing practice. So we'll practice in a minute. We'll practice breathing in for about 4 seconds, breathing out for 4 seconds. And we'll do this for a few rounds. And it may feel uncomfortable at first, but over time, you'll become more used to it. And again, it's a way of enhancing your body's ability to take care of itself. It's a better, literally a better way to breathe, a more conscious and aware way to breathe. So let's do this. So we'll do our abdominal breathing. We'll combine our abdominal breathing with our breath, with our mouth, with our taking in breath. All right, I'm sorry about that. All right, with our hands on our bellies, we're gonna breathe in for a count of 4. Oh, I know, I'm sorry, there was one other thing, but I'll do that at the end. Let's do this now. We're gonna breathe in for a count of 4. Remember, through our noses. 4, and out again through our nose for a count of 4. In through your nose. 4 and out. 3, 2, 1. Again, in. 3, 4, and out. 2, 1. Again, in. And out. And that is something you can practice throughout the day, just to get into a natural, stable breathing mode. Many of us breathe too rapidly from our chest. And the other one, the cycle breathing I want to bring up, and I know I've done this before, is a great way to trigger, again, that relaxation, rest and digest mode in our body, is to exhale for longer than we're inhaling. So we're going to practice that now. Again, we're going to be putting our hands on our belly so we know we're breathing correctly through our abdomen. And we're going to breathe in for a count of 4, and then we're going to exhale for a count of 7. Do as much as you can. If that's too much, you can always adapt, but I'll do that right now, and we'll do that for 4 rounds. So we're going to breathe in for 4. But when we exhale, now we're going to breathe out through our mouth like we're blowing out a candle to a count of 7. 1, 2. Again, in through 4, through your nose. Out through your mouth. In through your nose. 4, out. 3, 2, 1, in through your nose. Out through your mouth. This is also really good before going to bed. It's a great way to get your body into relaxation mode. Anytime you've had a lot of stress, it's an automatic trigger to that parasympathetic nervous system to put your body into a relaxation mode. You know, we certainly cannot control everything in our lives. Goodness knows now, we know that more than ever. You know, things are going to happen whether we're worried about them or not. No, but the only thing we can control is how we react to certain situations that are out of our control. And learning about our breathing, not taking our breathing for granted, is really an extremely useful tool for dealing with crisis, with life situations, with stress, but really also taking care of our health, taking responsibility for our health. So we're going to add it on to our exercise, our eating right, and our drinking water. We're going to add breathing onto that. And then you are all good. All right. Thank you.
It was great. You know, this is the 16th video cast that we've done. The two of you have done an unbelievable job, and that was definitely highlighted today. It was outstanding. I mean, the overarching themes that you both brought to the table, from Peggy's perspective, not perfect. From your perspective, can't control everything. But the beauty of that is then you've given techniques, both behavioral and applied meditative mindfulness techniques about how to deal with that. You know, because of the fact that, and we've had this discussion, you know, throughout our school exchanges. You know, we talk about mindfulness-based stress reduction, but we talk about meditation, but we are under no illusion that we're just, you know, advocating for people to have this image of sitting on a yoga mat in a lotus position for 45 minutes. That's not that. This is a micro meditation practice. This is a pause thought practice. This is having something to do, a tool, a resource, rather than being overrun by all of this. I mean, the reality of school-age children, okay, and making sure that everything is set for school-age children, anxiety producing. The reality of school-age children in this COVID quarantine, the uncertainty of it is heightened anxiety. And I think both of you, you know, should really feel good about the fact that you have brought together in a unified voice, you know, and we've talked about this as well. I mean, the whole hallmark of the ProActive Caring program is that you have a parent and a practitioner standing shoulder to shoulder in a unified voice. The two of you are the poster children for that. You've done an incredible job of looking at this issue, all issues, from different perspectives, but how unified it really is. So again, wonderful, wonderful from a behavioral perspective and from the applied meditative parent perspective. Great job. Any questions or reactions before we summarize this? Michelle, Zoya, Elaine?
Yeah, you know, just, you know, you're saying, you know, the perspective of a parent, you know, and I come to this presentation with the lens of an educator. I was formerly a school counselor, and I'm making the transition to a transition counselor. But, and also I'm a parent of a child who's going into kindergarten. This, you know, the whole presentation, you know, speaks volumes to me. And, you know, just, you know, talking about the, you know, mask endurance and prepping our kids before school starts, and just having, you know, the idea of being flexible, and then, you know, the tools of just simply breathing is really, really invaluable in all of this. So you know, I'm grateful that I was able to attend this morning. It was, you know, invaluable, both as a parent and as an educator.
Well, thank you, Michelle.
Yep.
Elaine, Zoya, any comments?
I agree. This was very helpful. I appreciate all the input and the preparation to think about. I also work with other families, and I'm also I'm grateful to have been a witness to this. And I also see that this is being recorded. I wonder if there's a place where these podcasts live for folks that weren't able to make it today.
Absolutely. We were under no illusion from the very beginning that people would just have the luxury of joining us on a Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock. So what we did, and it worked out well. How do we know this? Because of the comments that we received, both on a local level, a state level, and a national level. And what we've been able to do is we take these video casts, the school exchanges, and then by the end of today or tomorrow, they'll be circulated through our distribution list, through our mailing list. And then with the intent of asking people if they would send it through their networks. And then beyond that, we have a ProActive Caring, what we call the ProActive Caring Digital Resource Center, AKA website. And all of these live on that website underneath resources, underneath School Exchange. And not only will the video be there, but There will also be attachments and comments or guides that Peggy and Lisa put together, you know, for this particular one. And look, I'm a witness to this, and I have to tell you, the work that they do in preparing for this is enormous. You know, besides the conversations during the week and then putting the content together. So yes, you can find all of this. It lives on our website called proactivecaring.org. And as well, you'll also find there additional resources. We have an e-manual that is downloadable. We have videos, okay, that are downloadable. And we feel really very, very proud about what we've been able to accomplish and launch. And let's not forget this. Okay, we started off, this is a 3-year project. We started off the first year running small groups, support groups. Then we ramped it up the second year, and we were doing train-the-trainer models running throughout the state. And then COVID happened. And it was through an informal discussion with Lisa and Peggy that we came up with this model, because of the fact we had all of this content, but we knew we weren't going to be able to assemble people. So Zoya, your question is great, and the answer is absolutely. This material lives on our website called proactivecaring.org. And we're so glad, and for Zoya and for Michelle, when you do receive this later today or tomorrow, if you could circulate it throughout your network. Because Michelle, when you joined us today, I asked you, how did you hear about us? And you said that a colleague of yours said, this is something you may want to pay attention to. And that's the only thing that we could hope for. I mean, that's wonderful. So we're glad you're both here.
If you both could please stay on the line after the program ends, I'll get your email addresses and make sure you're on our distribution list.
Beautiful. Thank you, Elaine. So again, Peggy, Lisa, great job. Thank you for joining us today, Michelle and Zoya, and we will send this out. And if you could send it through your networks, that would be wonderful. So we will see you again next week at the same time for the next episode edition, as we're calling it, season 2, because we thought we were only going to go to April, the end of April, then the end of June, and now here we are back again. And rightfully so, and the two of you add so much value to the lives of individuals and families. So thank you very much.